So today we'll be talking about two different things that are happening in the Philippines. One is the more recent one. It's titled Duterte's War on Drugs, which I'll show you clips in a bit. And then there's another one that happened 20, 30, 40 years ago. That was very big in the Philippines, called the EDSA Revolution. So here's the first slide on Duterte. So over here, you'll see that Duterte is the one saluting to the soldiers over here. And it's called the War on Drugs because you'll see in the video in a bit is that basically what he has done is he has opened like a kill order for anyone who is suspected of taking drugs. So even if you don't go through the court, if someone suspects that, oh, it looks like or they look like they're taking drugs, we can kill them because the Duterte says we can. It's more like a vigilante type where people take justice to their own hands. Let me share screens again. There you go. Okay, here we go. So that's a brief overview, or like a quick summary of what the Duterte's War on Drugs is. And here's a video that I would like to show you. And this video is about a quick summary of what's happening in the Philippines with the Duterte's War on Drugs, and some of the different, or this is a specific activist who takes photography about what's happening. And one thing that I liked what he said during the video is that he says, I think it's my duty to take pictures of, some of the deaths that has happened, so that incident is not just a number in the statistic, that is actually a story. So it's more like humanizing the people that might be affected with what's happening in the Philippines right now. So here's a slide.
Josh, could you go back to slide 3 just for a minute? The students wanted to see that one, I think.
Oh yeah, so this picture will come up again later. The picture right now is of the EDSA revolution. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So onto the Duterte's War on Drugs, and here's a quick video, or not a quick video, but like a 5-minute long video. The best way that I kind of see what's happening in the Philippines is it's almost like a witch hunt, where if someone suspects you of taking drugs, then that's an automatic warrant for them to either shoot you or call the police on you, even if they don't have any hard evidence about what you're doing. And so that's some things. I guess a huge conflict that's happening there right now is that yes, the people are against fighting against drugs, but they're not for killing the people who are taking drugs. So yeah, that's the struggle that people are facing there now. And it's really crazy because this was in August, so it was just 3,000. But I think the statistic by now is like 5,000 people have lost their lives because of this war. And it's really sad. But what's really good is in the next video, we'll see that people are taking action. And this video was taken a month after the video that we just watched. And it's about the protests against what's happening in the Philippines. By the way, one last thing about this picture. This picture, they say stop the killing, and then they have a picture of this picture of a child and a mom. And the reason behind this picture is that a child accidentally lost, basically accidentally got killed because of the drug war. I don't think he was supposed to be a target, but he just was killed because of the laws, or like the lack of restraint that's put in this war over drugs. And so they had a campaign, Stop the Killings, because of that incident. But here's the next video that I would like to show, and it's what people are doing to protest against what President Duterte is doing in the Philippines. And I guess here, real quick, you can read the labels in the posters where it says "Stop drug-related human rights violations" and "Stop drug-related extrajudicial killings," where, you know, they're basically against the vigilante kind of deal that's happening in the Philippines. And here's the next video. As shared a while ago, where you guys give an example, and if I recall correctly, you said a definition that you put for activism is when someone strongly believes in something, like strongly believes in what they're thinking and acting upon that. I guess one example that you can get from like the last video that we saw is that these people are really believe in, you know, giving people a second chance, and they believe that people shouldn't just die without, you know, going through the court, without due process law. And I think one thing that I would like to really define real quick is martial law. Not sure if you guys are too familiar with that, but martial law basically is that the military and the president have like the final say in everything. So you know how here in the US you have the president, you have Congress, you have House of Representatives. So basically martial law is where all the power is not, you know, within those three, like the House of Representatives, senators. So all the power is given to the president and the military. So they can enforce whatever they want, not through laws, but through power, you know, by like by army and force. So that's what martial law basically is. And that's why when you hear them like, stop this martial law, we're not here for martial law. That's what they're saying. They're not for complete power by the president or the military. And so that's what's happening recently here in the Philippines. And actually, Duterte was just inaugurated this year or last year, but very recent. He's a very new president. And yeah, he's done a lot of things. And so just to think about these videos even more and like look at the information that we've gained, I would like to ask you guys 2 questions. The first one is, what is the issue, like in these videos, what is the issue of of this activism? Why is there activism? Like, what's the issue? What is the issue they're trying to address? And you can think about that maybe for a minute, and then maybe 2 people can come up and say what they come up with, and I'll give you guys like a minute or 2. Or just a minute, yeah.
Yeah, please don't get back. We were going to settle this yesterday. The answer essay? We're going to settle this. The deadline is on the settle this. Under assignment. I think it's tomorrow at 9, but it's under assignment.
Okay.
Did you scroll to the bottom of it? It's up there. I think it's tomorrow at 9.
Does anyone come up with what the issue is in the Philippines that we just watched? That we just watched a couple of minutes ago.
So what are they fighting against, or the activists?
Yeah, what are they fighting against?
Or protest.
they're fighting against the killing of drug addicts and people who deal drugs, because just because they do deal drugs is bad, or they're addicted to bad drugs, it doesn't mean that they need to be like completely exterminated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the main argument.
What my group talked about is that they should actually put more work into stopping the drugs instead of just killing everybody.
Yeah, that is the belief that that the people are holding. That's why they're holding this activism protests. And I guess a follow-up question after that, now that we know what the issue is, the issue is that people are dying without, even though just because they're suspected to have any connections with drugs. And since we know what the issue is, can anyone tell me like how it's being addressed? So in the first video, there's this one guy who's doing something to address the issue. And in the second video, we saw the protests and how they're addressing the issues. So can you guys maybe tell me real quick what people are doing to address this issue, or like who are the activists in these videos and what are they doing?
Kyla? Who the activists? Okay. So they were having riots and burning pictures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that scene was more of a symbolic way to protest. So they had this cube of Hitler, and then Duterte, and then Ferdinand Marcos, which is Ferdinand Marcos, who is the main subject of the EDSA revolution, which we'll be going over real fast. And then at the other side of the cube is actually like I think they said it was a communist or imperial dog. So they were making a statement there how they're kind of putting them all in one cube and showing how similar they are in what they've done. Because what Hitler did in the Holocaust, they're comparing what he did to what Duterte is doing in the Philippines. And them burning it is their show of disapproval in what Duterte is doing. So that's one way. So I just want to ask, how is activism expressed in the first video? If anyone wants to give it a shot.
Miles, you can come discuss it up here. Did you hear his question he just asked? Stay close enough. Thank you. The family members of those who were told there were so many kind of just bystanders, they were, I guess, kind of discussing the instruction that could follow.
Yeah. So I guess being open to share the stories of the experiences with what's going on is a form of activism. But another thing that I was looking for was that do you guys remember the photographer in the video where he's taking pictures of like all the crime scenes? I would say that he's an activist in a way that he's letting these people share their stories and giving a face or a picture or giving a story to what has happened. So that way it's not just a number where like, oh, there are 3,000 people who who's lost their lives because of this. instead of just saying 3,000 people, what he's doing is he's going into the crime scenes and like showing there are 3,000 of those kind of stories. So it's not just a number, but it's actually like something that happened, you know. So that's one way. Do I see someone coming up to talk in front? Or right.
I think that's it. Anybody else wanted to come up and share any reactions to the videos, or are you guys good to go on to the next part?
All good?
Yeah, we can move on. Okay, cool.
Okay, thanks.
So on to the next one, where it's very similar to what we just talked about with Duterte. It's called the EDSA revolution. And EDSA stands for Edsario de los Santos Avenue, which is just a street, basically, or a highway in the Philippines, or like I think it's in Manila. And it's called that revolution because a lot of people congregated, or a lot of people kind of massed up along that area. And yeah, over here you'll see a newspaper of FM declares martial law. FM stands for Ferdinand Marcos, who is the president, or I think he was more like a dictator, but he called himself a president in the Philippines, and that's what we'll be talking about. Very similar to Duterte's martial law, where he basically allows the army to run the country. So the EDSA revolution, just quick dates: 1972, Ferdinand Marcos, who became president, proclaimed martial law, where he's basically taking all the power to himself and the military, and having his power enforced by the military. And in February 7, 1986, the people, the Filipino people, were starting to wonder if, okay, I guess one thing that I should add for the martial law proclamation is that after that proclamation, anytime anyone would go against the government, they would either disappear, or which basically means that they took him out somehow. They take out any people who protest or do any criminal activity, and that's really bad because how here in the United States we have freedom of speech, where we can express our ideas, our opinions freely, and not have the government hurt us, or imprison us just because of our beliefs. That's something that we lacked during that time when the martial law was proclaimed, where if someone expressed disagreement with the government, or anyone stirred up anything against the government, they would just disappear, meaning the military took care of them in unsavory ways. But then people found up these happenings would occur between 1972 and 1986, and in 1986, because Ferdinand Marcos, we just call him President Marcos, kind of wanted the people to think that it's a democracy, even though it really isn't. So they held up the presidential election, and really Marcos was not too losing popularity, and so there was this other person named Corazon Aquino, who also ran for presidentship. And the thing about Corazon Aquino is that it's actually a girl, so a lady who ran for president. And what happened with Corazon Aquino is that her husband was actually a senator in the Philippines, and I guess her husband went against or did not agree with Marcos, and so he had to flee to the United States for refuge. And when he went back to the Philippines, Marcos, I guess ordered a hitman on him, and he just disappeared. And so basically he died under Marcos's order. And so in this presidential election, Marcos is going against Corazon Aquino. And what happened during the election is that the numbers are very different. There's corruption. So there'd be one statistic that says that Marcos wins, but then there's another statistic that says that Aquino wins. And so that's I guess was the last straw for the Filipinos. And in February 25, 1986, that same month and that same year, people just flooded the streets and in protest against Marcos. I think it was a period of 3 days between February 23 to February 25. And actually, during that period, Marcos gave an order for his military men and his commanders to start attacking the people. But the great thing about this is that even though the commanders got that command, the people, the commanders actually went against Marcos and protested along with the citizens, saying, "No, I know you gave us the order to, start shooting and trying to make this protest die down." But really, they went against that, and they protected the people, and they went with the people. So I think sometimes it's also called the bloodless revolution because no one really, it didn't get really messy. So it was more like a peaceful protest or peaceful revolution, even though it would have gone bad if the commanders were to follow Marcos's orders. But they went against that. They opposed, the violence. And in that same day, Corazon Aquino became the first female president of the Philippines. And actually, the only reason why I know the EDSA revolution is because my mom and my dad would talk to me about the EDSA revolution and what happened, how all these college students basically quit classes, to join this protest against Marcos. Because Marcos was really starting to act a lot more like a dictator, and so the Philippines is supposed to be a democracy, and he's acting otherwise. So from that quick story,